Welcome back. This is Kevin Chaos on the Trusty 8 podcast, here to make a brief recapitulation and do reflection on the circumstances surrounding my recent coming out as non binary and queer. I've been told there is no wrong way to go about this, and I generally tend to agree with that. However, the way that it happened in my case is um, not as I had planned. I like to reflect on some of those issues and clarify a few points. So, as Cindy Plaza recently um, has I believe done a video on and was generous in sharing her. I still hesitate to call it a graph or diagram of various aspects of the sex and gender spectrum. And we learned that there are various modes of biological sex, gender, and identity, right? Because there is gender associated with sex, and then there may be another factor of gender identity, attraction, sexually, and expression, which may fall in line with sex and gender identity, or with attraction, or with both. So there is a spectrum of various things going on, and my decision was an attempt to reconcile within myself, and based on a conclusion that I reached um, by reconciling various things that I've learned over the years and recognizing um, why or how certain messages, right, hadn't I had heard them, but I had not truly understood them. So we'll get into that. Um, but in effect, this is for me a decision that does not necessarily affect um, my feeling or expression of biological sex. That is a separate issue, right? Um, Identifying gender identification um, and sexual attraction and expression are more at play. And as far as everything I've read in literature and heard from individuals, this seems to be in line with something that is valid. Okay, so impulsivity is a recurring problem of mine, whether it's ASD or ADHD spectrum behavior, a result of other things, right? I will say I can recognize that I acted on impulse. I acted in haste, and I made many mistakes in doing so. I can also say there may have been some um, additional excitement, um, aggravation, and there may have been altered states involved. It's generally best to wait until that kind of passionate response subsides, come from a point of clarity, and deal with whatever else one might be going on, might have going on rather in their lives, and then to come back to this when one is truly ready to make a uh, clear-headed announcement and empty out all that additional baggage that might come with something like this. Okay, so the um, well, okay, so I will clarify now a few points which are worth touching, which is experience. Experience is a huge contributing factor, although not the whole story in all cases. Now, I made statements, they might be unclear. I'd like to try and unpack that now. Um, when I spoke of my experiences, they are unique to me. Um, and I also spoke of various things I had learned and experiences that had been shared with me um, via the transgender community, right? People within the transgender community, I should say, not they as a whole, but those that I have spoken with or had the pleasure of speaking with or listening to at length, right? So I have um, heard um, the various kind of so I've heard a number now of other people's unique experiences, and I had drawn some insight from some of those people. Now, that is not to say that my experience is in any way identical or even similar in any particular way to the experience of a transgender person. Um, I will say, I think we all have some common ground we can find in that we're all humans and we all have various shared experiences. But my experience is not the transgender experience and should not be interpreted as such. And it's not in any way equivalent, right? Different things. But I can still draw and relate and correlate the concepts that I learn from people who are transgender and um, and incorporate that information and that knowledge into my vocabulary, right? And it helps to inform my decisions, right? My experiences related to the experiences of another and the things that we might learn from each other. Um, so yes, I learned um, these concepts, and I applied them to my knowledge and my experience. This is not to say it is a shared experience or that um, it should be should be in any way thought to be speaking for or about the transgender experience, which has a lot to do with this kind of spectrum of sex, right, biological sex, and the gender attraction and expression of unique to each individual. So, um, and that's also going to play into the use of pronouns um, as we go forward. But that will be the topic of another video, which I'll describe to you at the end here. Sorry, I had to make another note. I'm using notes today and I'm off cam, no fancy microphones, and I'm hoping to get this done quickly. We're already pushing it. It'll be a lot quicker than the last one, I promise you. Okay. And in addition, in sharing my experiences, some of my experiences in fairly graphic detail, I will say that was not what I had intended to do. It was an impulsive decision. I made many during the course of making that video. And I went way off the script. And again, that's probably a matter of being in an altered and impulsive state, and these various circumstances surrounding that. So my intention was not to share the graphic details of my, specifically of my intimate experiences. So far as I did, it became seemingly necessary at the time, and probably wasn't. And these things happen. I do feel like I was fairly restrained in using appropriate descriptive language, not vulgar graphic language, but that's a kind of a subjective interpretation. I've always been one to be pretty liberal with the uses of profanity and slang generally, but I try not to do that here at the Trustee 8 podcast for various reasons, and was not a part of the scheduled programming. But intentions don't necessarily matter. You know, something about best intentions and uh, paths to hell. Yeah. The road to hell. However you'd say that. Okay, and then there's expectations. Expectations are probably one of the key elements to my situation and the way it panned out. So I had and various expectations of how I would be perceived and reacted to by different people, right? It's in one way, it's an attempt at mind reading, and in another way, it is you're trying to preempt and prepare for what may result, right? But if you actually go into a situation like this, if you're coming out as queer or gay or transgender or um, you know sorry, I'm having trouble with the term now, pansexual, what have you, any of these things, anytime you come out to your cis and straight friends as other than cis and straight, um, you're going to have an idea in your head of how that, what the result of that will be. And that is a product of your own projection, right? So what I was doing is projection. I had specific outcomes in my head, which I was preempting for, but in doing so, I actually came off as expressing uh, hidden resentments, hidden sense of shame and insecurity, right? That comes from that. I repeatedly used irreverent, homophobic um, kind of, I don't know what you'd say. It was, I was personifying um, a reaction, a homophobic reaction, right? Specifically, which is merely indicative of, kind of the attitudes of many of the people I've grown up around and the environment I grew up in, right? It wasn't that most people were homophobic. It was that this was kind of considered just something that was um, acceptable. It was acceptable to speak to people this way, and some people still find it acceptable. I will say I've not received nearly as much of any of that type of um, of a response as I had expected. The one person who did um, use rather violent and offensive language, um, I think did so for other reasons, right? They just used that as the only attack they had, the only ammunition, right? And wasn't really a response to what I had said, nor did they make any indication that they had actually um, seen any of my posts or my video prior to that point. But as a result of an unrelated dispute or something, I wouldn't even call it a dispute. Neither here nor there. So that was the most uh, awful language that's been hurled at me, and it was just one person, and I can't take it personally because I know that person has a tendency to uh, just kind of do nasty things of that nature. So without going too much into that, there was one other individual who felt it necessary to, you know, kind of retort in passing that they were happy for me and they respected my decision, but they just wanted me to be aware that they weren't scare quotes like that. The other person who happened to be in the room with us at the time was much more offended than I, and once again, I'm actually in the middle of a dispute that does not actually involve me. It is a result of me, which is really strange. But in any effect, that's not uh, necessarily the outcome that I had expected. And yet, things generally don't turn out as we expect them, or at least not precisely so. And so it's something to account for. And when you go into this, you should not have those types of expectations. Um, be prepared for the worst, but just hope for the best, right? And as I said before, and I'll say again, there's a difference between how you identify in your personal life versus your public life. There's various aspects of your public life, say your profession, that may have no, your employer may have no reason to be made aware of any of these types of decisions in your life. However, if it is a matter of, say, transgender, or you want to express as a different gender by a different pronoun, right? That will have to be addressed if that is something that's important to you, right? And these are all personal decisions. Your public persona is your personal decision. And those things can be identical, they can be separate, or they can exist upon a spectrum. And that is unique to each individual. So don't project your resentments and insecurities. Homophobia is no bueno. All right. And so let's talk about it. I went into this and I was looking for a fight. I still haven't gotten my fight proper, although I think I'd prefer to keep that in the debate ring, which is something I am much more well equipped for now. However, on that particular night, I did find a fight. I found the target I had been looking for, and that was Irenic. I've spoken to Irenic various occasions around the you know, metaverse, as it were, here, right? And the thing that happened, and I was in a Wild Heart stream, a couple other people, and I ended up in the stream with Irenic. Wild Heart mentioned that I had come out, and I did have a some kind of snarky. I don't remember what it was, but I had adopted a bit of a snarky screen handle and StreamYard to indicate uh, my decision. But when I came in, Wildheart brought it up. I said, "It's cool, but I've just spent a bit of time talking about it at length, and it's not something that I'm intent to focus on." That was the case, at least as far as what I intended. However, again, there's this projection, this resentment and insecurity, which is in some on some level it's subconscious, and so um, Irenic had asked me to clarify some positions and the decision I had made. We went into it, so Irenic uh, was well aware of um, my pronoun adoption, if you'd call it that, my adoption of non-binary pronoun. But I offered everyone in the room, as I do and will with everybody, a very suitable alternative. And this is just good advice in general. In these circles, if you're not well acquainted, or merely acquainted, I should say, right? Not friends, as far as that can go here. And you do not know, or gender preference is not indicated, uh, gender pronoun rather. If you do not know their preferred pronoun, or it's not indicated to you, sometimes even if it appears obvious, it's better to ask. But in any event, it's most appropriate to call people by their names, especially if you are in open rooms, especially if there are many talking heads in the equation, right? This seems like it should just be standard. Um, Irenic was relatively respectful while we were engaged in dialogue together. It turned from my personal gender identification to a biblical discussion, which seemed to be going fairly well. And then a third party stepped in. For some reason, I am drawing a blank right now. I apologize because I know you, whoever you are. The name's escaping me, but another individual jumped into the conversation and began arguing the point with Irenic, and Irenic repeatedly gendered me. It gendered me as he. I interrupted the conversation, asked them not to do that. The other person involved in the conversation acknowledged that they had unintentionally misgendered me as well in the course of the conversation, and proceeded to call me by my name. But Irenic proceeded to continue using a male gender pronoun during a discussion of me, which I was not participating in, but was listening to while I was still in the room. So I started to get worked up. I started to tear into him, and it was what it was. Now, unfortunately, it might appear that I just had a tantrum and left the room, but that's not the case. I had been on my phone for several hours, and my battery died. That's what happened. Not that it really matters. But the point was, I was looking for that fight, and if you're out looking for a fight, especially on the internet, you're probably going to find one. And again, it's just not a healthy way to begin this journey as a public in the public sphere, right? It's impulsive. That's not the way we go about these things. So, what should one do? One should seek self-affirmation and validation in oneself, right? Hoping for validation from others is perfectly natural. Seeking validation, especially putting some kind of additional constraint, say, you know, maybe some people didn't see your Facebook post within 4 or 5 hours, as was the case with me. And again, I was hoping for someone, and I expressed as much in Discord. I was hoping for someone to attack me prior to streaming, so that I could lay into them, and that has not been something that I've experienced then or have since. Seeking validation, right? Expecting a lot of congratulations and things like that. Again, it's nice. It's supposed to be a happy, joyous, liberating experience, and it is. But the way you go about it and the way you project yourself, like if that is not clear and from a place of mental clarity where you're being properly understood and received, um, then ultimately, again, this is just going to alienate people, and it's going to alienate most people, not the people you're intending to alienate or call out, but even the people who validated you to begin with, which was the case with myself. Right? I had been validated by others. I had been encouraged, and But those weren't the people that I wanted to to react at that time. There were other people, and there are other people who I'm still um, not certain of how those conversations will go, and I'm not intent to force them to happen anymore. That's not the point. The result you should want is a self-affirming identity, right? Something that feels right to you, expresses who you are, and and it should liberate you from something that is not representative or not at least not adequately descriptive of who you are or what you think or believe or how you wish to be perceived, right? So the result ultimately is the same as the decision. It should be a personal transformative result, and um, and you should be open-minded and be prepared for uh, any type of circumstance, but don't expect bad results, negative results, right? Um, don't expect a party in presence either. It may be the case that neither uh, will be coming to you. And regardless of all of that, just do the right thing. It's the right thing. Be morally consistent, right? Be morally consistent with yourself and honest in your in those aspects with others, right? It's a, it sounds much simpler than it is. Um, so be true to you, be morally consistent, and do the right thing outwardly. Don't just think the right thing, don't just say the right thing. But when you know it's right, do it. If you turn out to be wrong, as long as you're not killing somebody, you can always go back, make your amends, and correct. All right, we're going to end this going on 30 minutes, best I could do. We're all doing our best. I will reveal the tripod, the thing that got me to this and all the other things. I'm 14,000 words and almost 40 pages into my latest work, which is related to this thing. Once it's finished, it may be worth publishing. I have a lot of work left to do, but it is significantly underway. Let's just say that it is well underway. I can't say exactly halfway, three quarters, maybe somewhere in there, but it's going. Um, so this is effectively a single, well, I shouldn't say single, but rather comprehensive philosophical theory or thesis or treatise, whatever one might call it. And it will encompass aspects of um, ethics, gender, politics, and society, respectively. It will lend to my argument to abolish the Constitution um, for better sex and gender equality and hopefully better morality. That's the aim, and it will help us have better philosophical discourse. My targets of interest will be Snake Was Right, who will be doing a uh, response to their video, rather, on cis people becoming non binary, like myself, and additionally, T-Jump. So I look forward to, as some have been telling me, maybe picking some of the not so low hanging fruit in the near future and still talk about religion and all of that good stuff. But I want to focus my efforts where they might be useful, where I might broaden my own knowledge and horizons. All right, ending broadcast. Hindsight is always 30 minutes and 30 seconds. All right, bye bye.